if you're good with your hands, we need to encourage the crap out of that so that you are going to be a builder, whether you're going to be an engineer or you're going to be a welder or an electrician, whatever. But like, we need to encourage. I mean, there's a school in Illinois I'm aware of. They are required to take a quarter of home ec, they're take a quarter of electrical, a quarter of welding. You know what I mean? Just open the world to the kids. Let them know what there is out there, because most kids don't know.
All right, welcome back to another podcast on the lost art of the skilled trades. I'm super excited because I am down here at the Welding Summit down in Woodlands, Texas. And I met Shanen Aranmor. Let me get it right. From Weld Like a Girl.
Correct.
Welcome, Shanen, to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this statistic out to you, and I just want to hear your thoughts about this. The welding workforce data site from the American Welding Society says we have about 4 to 5% of women who are welders. Why do you think we don't have more women who are in the welding field, and that only stays about 4 to 5%?
It is increasing, but usually when I talk about this, I say, do you know that only 95% of welders are men? And they're like, wait, what? Like, put the spin on it. Right now, the world is shifting. We are definitely seeing more women and high school girls interested, more single moms interested in going back to school. It is turning, the tide is turning. And in construction in general, I know NAWIC, the National Women in Construction Group, I think they said 14% of the construction trades now are women. But I think it hasn't been encouraged. It's not been something traditionally that you are even allowed to explore if you're female. I know where I live, I've had young ladies come up to me and say, I really wanted to get into welding, but my dad said I can't because I want to go to the prom.
Interesting.
And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? And she's like, well, I can't be a girl if I want to be a welder. And I was like, you don't have to make that choice. So sometimes what I'll do if I'm going to be interviewed or filmed or something is if it's like an event that's going to be recorded that's kind of going to be used for young women, I'll even like go a little over the top. I'll get a little more girly than I normally would, just to show them that, yes, you can be in a dress and you can go to work with steel toes on the next day. But you have to, you know what I mean? I think we just really need to encourage. We don't provide a lot of opportunities. Now, there are some fantastic places. There are schools and there are community colleges and there are businesses that have maybe opportunities for girls to test out welding, but we just don't have enough of those yet. And so how do you know what you don't know? Like, how do you know you like welding if you've never even seen it?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because it depends how you grew up, right? If your parents said, hey, go to college, right? But maybe you had a technical spark or mechanical ability. And I always say this, like, what is happening in schools? Are kids sitting down with guidance counselors and guidance counselors saying, you know what? You'll be really good as a welder. I don't know if that is actually happening. And it's like, where are shop classes in schools? And kids just don't have the information. And then they go to college, and then sometimes they figure out after, or they drop out of college, maybe they're in their mid-20s, and then they find trades.
Well, so when I was completing my welding degree, I was a substitute at a high school. And this young man came into my classroom and he said, I really want to take your class, but the principal told me I was too smart. I was heated. I marched in her office without really knocking. And I was like, what are you doing? And she said, well, these kids can't be successful in English class, so we're going to put them in welding. And I said, ma'am, do you want your bridges built by people who cannot read directions? Right. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, there's WPSs, there's blueprints, there's all kinds of things, and it's a really technical area, but you are now announcing to the entire school that if you're dumb, you go into the trades. I was like, that's exactly the opposite approach that we need to take. If you're good with your hands, we need to encourage the crap out of that so that you are going to be a builder, whether you're going to be an engineer or you're going to be a welder or an electrician, whatever. But like, we need to encourage, and maybe even, I mean, there's a school in Illinois I'm aware of. They are required to take a quarter of home ec, they're take a quarter of electrical, a quarter of welding. You know what I mean? Just open the world to the kids. Let them know what there is out there, because most kids don't know. If your parent's not a welder, How do you know what welding is? I did not understand the depth of machining until I started contracting with Project MFG, Project Manufacturing. Their welding and machining competitions, especially at the national level, I mean, this is really high-end competitions. The winning team gets $100,000. That's a lot of money.
Wow, yeah, that is a lot of
50,000
money.
goes to the school, and then 50,000 goes to the team of usually 3 or 4. I'll be on the welding side of the competition, and then I get to see machining, and I was like, whoa, if I had seen this in high school, I don't know what direction I might have taken. I mean, I love welding, don't get me wrong, one of my favorite things, but I just didn't even know what CNC machining was because I'd never seen it. So how do you know what you don't know? You got to get kids out there to get their hands dirty on stuff. Any of the Spark Force or any, like it used to be called Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs, any of those kinds of camps that you can have kids participate in so they can see, to kind of test drive stuff is definitely the way to at least open the door. But specifically to your question for girls and women, remove the stigma. It's not a man's job. There are some fantastic people on social media that talk about this all the time. And they're entertaining because they'll talk about, one of the approaches is this woman has really super long nails, which I couldn't do, but she's talking about like you be pretty in the workforce and you're not trying to steal someone's man. You're just trying to do your own job. And I think the more also that we have women who are intelligent and they do trade jobs that are well-spoken and entertaining, the more we're going to have access to that too. Kind of giving you permission to be whatever you want to be. You don't have to be like, oh, I can't go to the prom because I'm going to wear steel toes.
Yeah. You got to be who you want to be. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about stigmas in schools, and it was always thought as like an option B for a kid, like you said. Oh, they're one of the bad kids. They're not excelling. So yeah, you can be a welder, a plumber, or an electrician. And I think those adages are starting to go away. What you were saying, like on social media, when you see somebody, and I always think of somebody who's doing great things on social media. So someone like, let's say, I'm just trying to think.
Well, I look at Built Pretty.
Okay.
She's in construction. I believe she graduated from Harvard. So that's totally not what you'd expect for someone in the trades anyway. But she's well-spoken. She will go up to different tools and explain what the Bridgeport is all about and how exciting it is and what it builds and what it does. So she's educating at the same time as she's promoting the trades. And because she's a dynamic personality and a fun, vivacious young lady, like, you want to look at her, you want to listen to her, you want to follow her and be like, yeah, I could do that.
Oh, it just popped in my mind. Jamie McMillan.
Okay.
She's an iron worker up in Canada. I
Yes.
got to meet her. I spoke with her at a vocational school last year. She's doing great things. Like, she's a dynamic woman. She cares. She had an interesting background. She has ADHD. Like, you can really relate to someone like that. And I love those type of stories. And I'm going to be speaking tomorrow about
I know, I get to introduce you.
Oh, even better. About inspiring sort of the next generation, attracting Gen Z. And really, it's about understanding what they want, what Gen Z wants. It's a lot of the themes we were talking about during the whole conference is mentorship, having a mentor. Some people have not had mentors, someone to look up to. But I believe it's about how do you connect with that generation, especially someone, who's a little bit older. So how does Gen X connect with Gen Z, someone who's just sort of coming into the industry? And I believe that Gen Z has different motivators because those are the next generation of welders from age 13 to age 28. That's Gen Z. That's our next workforce. And how do you connect with those individuals to, like you said, get them interested in working with their hands?
Well, I try to do it earlier than 13. I have 22 second graders that come into my school twice a year, and 7 and 8-year-olds are sponges. And what I typically do, I work with, in the mornings, I have a high school program that comes in. They're a charter high school and they don't have any trades programs. So they come to my fab shop for 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And they learn how to do real life projects. We've done fabrication projects for the city, the state, and different parks, the county. And so they're in the process of learning how to build things. And then I will have 22 second graders come in once a semester, and the high school students become the mentors. It's fantastic. Andrew, I'm going to tell you, the first time I did it, I was ready. I had my helmet on. I was like geared up. I was a little nervous about this. And I stood back and I was like, having one of those moments where your eyes start to sting a little bit. And I was like, this is exactly why I quit my big girl job. This is why I left corporate manufacturing to spark a difference and to like ignite that fire in the kids, but also to empower those high school kids. They didn't think they could. I didn't even tell them that this was going to happen. Because some of them are at risk in different ways, right? And so they showed up one day and I said, I got about 20 minutes. I need the extra small gloves at that booth. I need the extra smalls at that booth. I need extra small jackets. I was explaining where in our facility everything had to go. Miss, what's going on? I said, well, we got 22 second graders coming here in 20 minutes. So you gotta step it up. Miss, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're going to teach them how to weld. Well, why didn't you tell us? I said, would you have come to school today? No. Well, there you go. There's your answer. That's why I didn't tell you. So when you can, so there's so many good things that happen with this. But one of the things is that the high school students are empowered and they want to come back. And so they might actually stay in the trades, or they'll at least explore them more as options. But then those 7 and 8 year olds, they didn't know what welding was the day before. And you'll hear them like little bubbles bursting, like coming up from soda, and they're, I want to be a welder, blah, 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 and they're all excited. And so, starting that passion that early, like I feel like we're focusing too much too late. We have to start earlier. Kids don't know what they don't know. If you don't have anyone in the trades in your family, you don't know what those trades look like. How do you know? You could be the best electrician or carpenter in the whole world, but you didn't even know that existed. Or so many other trades. I mean, think of it, NCCR has 70 plus trades. I didn't even know there were 70 trades growing up. Like, we gotta start really early.
Yeah, and I think reaching sort of the younger generation, especially, and I keep saying Gen Z because that's really our next workforce, but having those type of programs and teaching them at an early age. And it's really up to us, even organizations and companies.
Absolutely.
Right? They need to, we can't be invisible. We need to show up where they are, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's at a middle school, whether it's at an elementary school. But even when you do show up at an elementary school or you show up at a middle school, you need to be impactful because it's a different audience, right? So if you're speaking in front of adults, it's a little bit different than speaking to a 10-year-old or 12-year-old because they tend to tune out, sometimes quickly. And it's funny, I was thinking about this. I was speaking at a vocational school, and I speak at some vocational schools around the country, and it was the first time I was doing this. And I was like, okay, I've spoken to, obviously, a lot of audiences, but not so much kids. So I was like, how do I connect with them? I was like, let me go to my own kids, and let me ask them, how do I connect with a younger generation? And my daughter, who's 8, Avery, and my son, 11, Ethan, he's like, Dad, you have to talk about Fortnite. You have to talk about Xbox. You got to talk about cell phones. I'm like, really?
Roblox, yeah.
Thank you, Roblox, that too. So the next day I show up 9:00 at the school, and the first thing I say, who plays Fortnite? Who plays Xbox? The thing is, I got their attention right away, but I needed an analogy. If the power went out, your Wi-Fi would go out. You wouldn't be able to connect to your games. And linemen and electricians, this is what they do. It got them connected. If I stood up and I said, you know what? We need 320,000 welders by 2029. They're looking at me like eye roll. So I knew it worked because at least 6 of those kids came up to me after just inquiring about the trades. And that's how you connect to the younger generation. So yes, we can be purposeful of getting to the schools, but we need to be impactful, that we need to make some sort of impact.
So my solution is to bring a welder. I have a portable booth. I bring a welder, I bring some interns or some high school kids, and we bring tons of PPE in different sizes. And during career fairs, we have a stream of children coming through, and they will pull the trigger and they get to see the sparks and the auto darkening helmet. So I've got one person helping with PPE, getting on jackets and gloves that are the appropriate size, because now they make some. Woo. And then explaining the auto darkening helmet. Now you're going through a career fair. It's a pretty quick turnover, so the kids don't get to learn a lot, but they at least get their hands on it, and then they can ask more questions. And so once you've opened that door, game changer.
I love that. And if parents see that as well, if it's a career day and they're with their kids, then they can start asking questions as well. I think that type of work, also gamification, VR. I had a chance, we were talking about Fab Tech before we started recording, and I made my way onto the American Welding Society's trailer. So people who don't know, they have a trailer that goes around. And Stephanie Hoffman, I think at that time, was running the trailer. And I remember going on the trailer. So they have 5 or 6 Lincoln Electric virtual welding machines. And I remember seeing this kid, Jordan. Jordan never welded before, young kid. And he's with his parents. He just happened to go onto the trailer, and they set him up. And all of a sudden, he simulated, did some sort of bead, and he got an 80 out of 100. All of a sudden, he lit up. Like, wow! Even the parents were like, wow, maybe Jordan has this mechanic. Maybe it's got, it just has it.
And he's also competitive, so now he's going to want to get a better score than 80.
Exactly. On top of, then the conversation started. So having yes. On site, I think it's great if you can set that up, but also the virtual side, like AWS's trailer, but also there are companies like Transfer and Interplay Learning that do these VR experiences that kids can really start learning. I remember just putting on the Shield and running the Transfer system, and I was in a factory, and all of a sudden the belt went down, and I had to put the helmet on, and I had to, it just got me in like, oh, okay, now I get a sense for what it's about.
I like that real world application that Transfer has. I also really like Miller Electric has a handheld. It's really inexpensive. The Lincoln Electric Vertex are fantastic, but they're $46,000. A handheld one for $3,000 is much more likely for maybe companies to go to a career fair, or even like have that in the guidance counseling office, right? While you're waiting for your appointment. Play welding, I don't know. I think you're right. The gamification of the trades is definitely going to be important in our upcoming years. But there are some tools now that are out there that are not inaccessible. Most people can't afford a $50,000 machine, but a $3,000 machine you can get a grant for, or maybe that's just part of your HR budget if you're a manufacturing company and you're trying to recruit the people that you need in the future.
While we were talking, I was thinking about another program that works really well, because we talked about that a lot of shop classes in schools. And some teachers are taking that initiative and creating their own shop class. So I'm thinking about, there's a teacher by the name of Edvin Jarrett, AKA the dope teacher. That's what they call him. Right. I don't know if you know him, but he's out in Pennsylvania. And every day he goes live on Instagram. And these kids who were like 10, 12 years old, they have blowtorches, they have sawzalls, they're cutting under supervision. You talked about, obviously, getting kids used to working with, torches or power tools. And he's doing this. And all of a sudden, there's water coming out of pipes and they're trying to plug the hole. Like, he's taking it on himself to teach those students. And that program is now well known. But if more programs were like that,
exactly,
kids would be more interested in potentially working with their hands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I come from a SkillsUSA background. I competed nationally in welding fabrication. And so pretty heavily involved with skills, but also with Project MFG, which I'd mentioned before. And Project MFG does welding competitions, machining competitions, and additive manufacturing competitions to really elevate and promote the skilled trades. Fantastic. My second event with them, one of my favorite people that works there asked me, he's this old grizzled Army guy. He's like, hey, kid, what do you think about this? And I said, this is great, but who's here? At any competition, what you've got are high school or community college programs that are already participating in welding. What we need to do is look outside of that box. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, keep encouraging that like crazy, but we need to go outside of that box. And I said, look, if you're fishing in the wrong, if you are fishing in the same pond, you're never going to find different fish.
Ooh, I like that.
And he was like, okay, what do you got? And I said, there's 11,000 homeschooled children in the state of Arizona. None of them have access to CTE programs. Like, oh, wait a minute. So he's like, all right, we're going to do a competition in your shop. It has to be by the end of the fiscal year. And I was like, bro, that's June in Arizona. Like, do you have any idea where I live? And so it was really warm that first year. And now we do it in either January, February, or this year we'll be doing it in November. But what we do is a team of 3 homeschooled kids with no welding experience. We match them up with people that are not their own siblings. So we don't have any of that, fighting and stuff. And they have, in the morning, they have an opportunity. They get matched with a mentor. Each team gets matched with a mentor. And
how old are these kids?
10 to 17.
10 to 17. Okay. And the ratio of boys to girls?
I haven't looked at the actual percentage, but I would say probably about 65% boys, 45% girls. Like, it's almost equal. It might be equal some days. It depends on which, but the homeschooled parents, I mean, they have such freedom in their time. They can decide, I'm going to teach this unit in 2 hours, or I'm going to teach it in 10 hours. So what happens is, in the morning, the mentor connects with them. They have approximately an hour for welding, approximately an hour for cutting, whether it's plasma cutting, oxyfuel cutting, or chop saw. We have done angle grinders before with cutoff wheels, and that was too stressful for me. We had to let that one go. But I do use variable speed. All of my grinders are variable speed, so I turn them way down when we're working with kids.
That's smart. Okay.
And they don't have that kick. They're a little heavier, but they don't have a kick.
Yeah, there's a lot of torque in those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we'll use now like just flap discs for that. But so then they have the third hour in the morning is to look at blueprints, very basic welding blueprints, and like, how do you assemble things? Then they have lunch, and then they come back and they are given a print. Everyone's given the same print, and they have 3 hours to compete to build this particular thing, and then it gets judged.
Ooh, okay.
And the first year, we let the kids decide who got to take the project home. The second year, I have a sign in my shop that says, all disputes will be solved by rock, paper, scissors. And I thought that was fantastic, but we got a few complaints from moms. They were like, well, why couldn't we get a third of the project? I'm like, because we made a doghouse out of metal, and if you cut it into 3, it's not a doghouse anymore. So then we realized that's not going to be our approach anymore. So we find a local nonprofit, and I work with them ahead of time to figure out what project we're going to make 20 or 24 of or whatever. And that way they can auction them off or do whatever they're going to do for a fundraiser. So the kids are now contributing to the community as well.
I love that.
It's fantastic.
Is this going on a couple years?
Yeah, I think we're in our, I think we're in our 4th year now.
Okay. Do you have sponsors that help with this, or?
We have, we haven't, and we had not in the past, but this past year we had a local company that does framing, and they donated all of the material. They donated the money for the material. But yeah, we're definitely like going to have to figure that out because we want to grow that program. And Project MFG is the overarching, it's their competition hosted at Weld Like a Girl. And there's prizes. I mean, it's cool and it's fun. And our local Southwest business contractors, they came to talk to the kids about a career fair that they have where you can go and do active things over a 2-day period. So it's growing, but the cool thing is the kids work as a team. It's a fabrication team of 3. They have to work together. And so what some of the teams will do, the kids will decide, I'm better at this, you're better at that. And they'll actually delegate. Other kids are like, let's do everything together. And it doesn't really matter to us. We just, the mentor steps back and is there primarily for safety or if the kids can't lift something. But in the afternoon, it's the kids working on the project themselves. And at the end of the day, a local nonprofit benefits. And so everybody wins.
It's a win-win all around. Is there one sort of story or success story out of that program? Is there one person that sticks out, one participant, one boy, one girl
There's one that I have on my social media. His name is Jace, and he talks about being a 10-year-old cowboy and welder. He's so confident. I just love it. Like he's adorable. But one of the things that really strikes me is, and we try to make the projects small enough that the kids aren't, first of all, they'll fit on our welding tables, but also the kids aren't struggling. We don't want to set them up for failure in any way. But there was this one little girl. I mean, she was just tiny. I think she was 10 or 11 years old. And she goes and picks up this 2 foot by 2 foot, 1/8 inch plate and just picks it up like she is Wonder Woman and brings it over to the plasma table and slams it down. And she's like, I got this. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Yeah. So it's just a really empowering kind of day, kind of experience for them. But a lot of them have gone on and taken a welding class at our local community college, or they've, used, we have a program called ESA in Arizona, and that's basically the educational equivalent. So whatever the child would have cost to go to school, the family can use that on educational materials. There are some pretty strict restrictions now, but it used to be that they could take a class with me and then go buy a welder, because that's now an educational piece of equipment. So yeah, I mean, we're moving the needle a little bit. I mean, we've, not impacted thousands of kids yet, but that's
right. But
we're working on it.
Right, but it's a slow progression, right? And you're making impact. There are obviously programs out there that are making impact, but just to see and I'm saying it was Jace, the young
Jace.
Mm-hmm. At 10 years old, who is also a cowboy.
Yeah, no, he totally identifies as a welder now after one day.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know what I was even doing at 10 years old, but I
Exactly.
wasn't like, but at least even if they don't go into, let's say, the trade, they're still, getting familiar using their hands, and they can do stuff around the house. And they don't necessarily have to go down the path if it's not right for them, but at least they're getting exposed that they want to take, an extra step or take a course or go to a welding school.
And another important piece that I think we forget sometimes is that if kids don't go down the path of the skilled trades, they now have a respect for it. They now understand, like, oh, that's hard work, or that's more complicated than you might think. Anytime someone takes a class with me, and it could be an adult, they walk out going, oh, that's where they make the money they make. Like, yeah, because you don't just walk up to a TIG machine, grab the tools, and within 20 minutes, you're awesome at it. I mean, there are very few exceptions, but like for the most part, I tell them, I'm like, people go to school for 16 weeks to 4 years to become proficient at this. And it's practice plus patience equals progress. You got to just keep doing it.
Reps.
And I remember the first time that I put down a decent stick weld. I was so excited. I go up to the professor and I'm like, look at this. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, good. Burn 1,000 more rods. I'm like, no, but I got it. He's like, no, go burn 1,000 more rods. And I was like, what? This guy's hard. And then I was like, because sometimes it's beginner's luck, and you've got to have that muscle memory. But even if people don't go into the skilled trades, just to have that appreciation of the work and the craftsmanship that goes into it, I think it's really important. It helps them develop respect.
It is. And it's a sense of fulfillment as well by getting, that work done. But you need to have the technical skills. You also need to have the soft skills. And you talked about SkillsUSA, and I light up every time that I hear about SkillsUSA, because I was down there last month. And I was down there with SkillsUSA, who did a partnership with TikTok. And I was one of 3 curators to go down there and create videos and content. I spoke to a lot of kids, but I went over to
Did you see the welding sculpture competition?
Yeah, no, I saw the aftermath of all the sculptures.
Yeah.
I like to go through and I take video of all the sculptures. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, we don't have live welding. We have live welding there, but we don't have them construct the sculpture there. But that's I'm the tech chair for that, and I love it. It's so crazy.
And I'm like, these kids are young. How do they have that? Just at such a young age. And I think of like Barbie the welder. Like she had said that she learned herself. Like she was not like no one really taught her. She was kind of like she did it on her own. But these kids at such a young age.
Some of the high school projects are better, or at least as good as the community college or post-secondary. But anyway, you were saying, I interrupted because I was excited about welding sculpture. But you were at Skills.
Yeah, Skills, and when you think about shortages in welding and other trades, you go there, you're like, where is the shortages? Because they're not anywhere. And these are just high school kids, but they're super excited to want to learn a trade. And we were talking about soft skills. The kids that are coming out of SkillsUSA, that are a part of SkillsUSA, they have both.
They have to.
They
it's
have
part of the
both.
competition. It's built in.
And some of those kids, they get offers right off the floor. And I love when you walk into some of the technical schools and they have the SkillsUSA flag, and you talk about it, and the shop manager, whoever is there, they light up. They start, oh yeah, our students went there and we got second place, and I love it down there.
I've been on an airplane several times, and first time it happened, I was working for Miller Electric as a trainer, and I had a helmet bag, and the guy looks over and he's like, "Is that a welding helmet?" He's the guy sitting in the middle seat. And I said, "Yeah, it is." And he asked me something, and he said, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just coming back from Skills," because we, as a team, we would always go and help and set up and judge and all that at Skills. And he's like, "Oh, SkillsUSA, I competed in that." And so he was all excited. He'd done some kind of like job display, and he said it changed his life. And I said, "Oh, I know it did for me. I mean, I am a welder because I competed in that." And the funny thing is, I did not expect to, and I didn't want to. My advisor asked me one year, I was doing part-time because I was going back to school. He asked me, "Would you be a part of SkillsUSA, the fabrication team?" I said, "No." He
Why?
said, because I didn't grow up with tools.
Oh, okay.
I didn't grow up with power tools. I took a machine tool class. There is a bandsaw that's still in this school where I now teach part-time. That bandsaw, Andrew, it is big enough and powerful enough to cut a frozen cow in half. I heard those words and I'm like, whoa, stepping back, not happening. So while I wasn't necessarily afraid of tools, I learned how to use those tools in that program. I don't want you to rely on me. What if I didn't learn enough? What if I wasn't experienced enough? It's that enough mentality, right? And so the next year he asked me, "Would you be on the fab team?" I said, "Nope." And a couple of weeks later, he came back. He goes, "Okay, would you agree to be the alternate to the alternate?" I was like, that sounds pretty safe. The next day, I was the alternate. Within 2 weeks, I was on the team, and we were competing at regionals. We won at regionals. We went to state. We won at state. And I'm like, oh, this was so not where I was going, And when we got to nationals, and we did not podium, and that's okay. I know exactly why. It was our teamwork. It was our soft skills. But specifically, our teamwork score was low, and I knew exactly what was happening. One of my teammates every day during practice prior to going to nationals would stand there and hand me a grinder. And I'm like, "I'm not your grinder girl. We have to all do this. We are a team of 3, and the rules said that each teammate has to be able to do all welding processes in all the positions required. And so I've got to be a part of this too." And so that was like we did not have the best team dynamics. I tried hard, but that's okay. And that was the last class that I had to do, because within about a year, I was at SkillsUSA on the stage hanging medals. And I have gotten to hang medals every single year since then. So while I didn't earn a medal, I have the privilege of hanging medals.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
So it totally changed my life.
Yeah. Imagine if you just never went.
I was chicken. I didn't do it for like 2 years. I was like, no,
So what do you
I don't want you to rely on me.
So what do you tell somebody who's thinking in your situation, I don't want to be there? Do you recommend them to
100%.
take a chance?
Well, I say, practice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing. Once we knew we were going to nationals, we had about a month. And so every single weekday, we met as a team and we built things and we read blueprints. And I got to be pretty good at reading blueprints. So anything that had to do with that, that was my job. And then someone else, he was really good at this. And so, we kind of identified our strengths, knowing that we all had to share in every aspect of it. But you're going to get better. If you don't practice, you're never going to get better. And one of my teachers thinks that I said this, and I think he said it, but we both give each other credit. He's a former Marine, so probably it was him, and he's just being nice. But he said, "Practice plus patience equals progress." Perfection is not necessary, but you have to be in it You have to be there. You have to show up. And when you show up and you learn how to use those tools, you build your confidence. And you may not be the best, but it's not always, at SkillsUSA, it's not always the best welder or the best, in my case, because I'm the tech chair for welding sculpture for nationals, it's not always the best sculpture that wins. It's the combination, it's the complete package. Because for welding sculpture, they create a sculpture, they have to put together a professional portfolio and notebook, they have a written knowledge exam about all basic, but all 4 processes in both cutting, 4 welding processes and 2 cutting processes. So even if your sculpture is all TIG welded, you still have to have a basic knowledge of other ones, right? Then you have an interview. And now 2 years ago, we added the live welding component so that we know that you actually did some work that you actually can do, because you're showing up with a sculpture that's beautiful, but how do we know that you're actually the one that did it?
Of course.
And so we try to put like evidence, I guess, in the notebook and stuff, but the live welding component is kind of one of the things that we're using to help us with that. So you could have the best sculpture possible, but if you have nothing in your notebook, that's
You're not gonna,
hundreds of points. You're not gonna win.
So what set the winner apart?
Oh my gosh, Andrew, this year it was 1 point between each one.
1 point.
1 point.
So what was
out of 1,000 points? It is nerve-wracking. I can't stand it sometimes.
So how did that 1 point, what was the difference?
It could have been you got 2 more points for your sculpture on creativity, but you scored 3 points less on your welding knowledge. I mean, it's because we have so many components. And the cool thing, because it's such a challenging competition to score, it's a subjective, art is subjective. So what I do is I have a minimum of 3 CWIs that look at the welds. And if they've ground down the welds in their documentation, there should be photographs of the welds. So they're looking at the welds and the cuts. I have a minimum of 2 people that have either degrees or a lot of experience in art. And that way they're looking at design, creativity, negative space, positive space, all that kind of stuff.
Different
that
perspectives.
CWIs will have maybe nothing to do with, right? And then we have usually a minimum, sometimes it's more, but usually I have about 3 people that are not in welding at all and not in art. They are the people that come in and go, would I buy that? You know, like it used to be when we were in Kansas City, it used to be the head of baking that would come in. She was
funny.
But as long as you judge each sculpture and you use a consistent rubric, it doesn't matter if your background's different than mine.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, and so it's trying to be fair, as fair as you can be in a competition that is, I mean, there's no theme. We don't restrict participants to have a theme. So you might make something that's really meaningful to you, and that could be a largemouth bass, for example. We always get fish every year. And that could be reminiscent of the times that you went fishing with your grandpa, and that's really important to you. And then someone else might create a sculpture with roses, and maybe that has to do with something important in their life, a family member. So how do you compare fish to roses?
That's true.
So wait,
who won? Do you remember what the
Well, there's 2 different levels. There's the secondary and the post-secondary. I mean, I could look up my text, but I can't remember. There's so many good ones. And I don't judge them. I am in the interview process, but because I'm the tech chair, I don't have time anymore, which is good. It takes a lot of stress off of me because it's hard.
Yeah,
I usually tell my judges, like, walk through and then, but also keep the post-secondary and the secondary in different buckets in your head, because you're looking, you can't compare them. They're going to be competing independently. But they were all, I mean, there's so many fantastic sculptures, and the competition now has the kind of the walkway where you can meander through. It used to be just around the perimeter, and sometimes the sculptures that weren't as maybe like dramatic didn't get the attention. But now that you have to walk past all of them, people see sculptures in a different way. They're like, oh, I wouldn't have noticed that one, but that's really cool. Yeah.
I remember going live on TikTok with my audience, and I was going through that, and Sarah Stork came on, and she's like, yeah. And because, she was one of our winners. I mean, I know Sarah because she competed for twice at Skills, and she podiumed both times. She is an incredible artist, and she's a really kind person, and she's got a fantastic attitude. Did she tell you about the sandwich story? She did not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to maybe botch this story a little bit, but hopefully not. Basically, someone found out, a male person found out that she was a welder. And he was like, well, why don't you just go back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich? And so one of Sarah's really beautiful sculptures is a giant sandwich.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Oh,
and she did such a cool
funny.
job. Yeah, so she made a sandwich.
That's funny. I'm going to bring that up because she's supposed to be on a future episode. So
Good. Yeah, ask her, like, do you make sandwiches? Yeah, just ask her. And
That's the first question.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask.
Okay, so
do you make sandwiches?
Do you go to the kitchen and make sandwiches, or do you go in the welding shop and make sandwiches?
Oh,
yeah.
That's going to be a fiery episode.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, she's
that's
cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that you're a part of SkillsUSA, and that's also, I'm going to bring that up tomorrow during my presentation about programs that are really working out there. Did you have did anybody in your family, did you grow up? Anybody in your family was a welder, or nobody in your family?
No one.
Huh.
So my background's a little weird. I was the first person in my family to go to college because it was expected. And you're going to go to college. So
What'd you study?
Biology.
Biology. Oh, I
love science.
Yeah.
And I was really good at it. I wasn't very good at math. In fact, I was the kid that was like in the gifted and talented. So they put you in the gifted and talented math. And I'm like, oh, God. So I remember in 8th grade putting my hand on my hip, looking at my teacher saying, I'm never going to use algebra again. And then in 9th grade, looking at my geometry teacher, I was struggling so hard in geometry. I'm like, I'm never going to use this again. Super sarcastic, right? But I love science. Unfortunately, for a lot of families, and I've seen this so many times, in a lot of families where no one went to college, they don't know how to guide you. So I'm like, well, what do I do to go to college? And they're like, I don't know, just figure it out. So what do I study? They're like, I don't know, what do you like? Well, I like biology, I like science. So you get out of school with a 4-year biology degree, and you are qualified to do nothing. I mean, really, like, we didn't even have Starbucks back then, so I couldn't even be a barista. So, I mean, I didn't know what to do. And they're like, you can go to medical school, you could teach high school, or you can go on to grad school. Okay. So I wound up working for 2 years in big pharma and realized that I was selling my soul to the devil, and that wasn't going to happen. So I went back to grad school. So anyway, became a college professor in a completely different area. I was in the field of wellness.
Oh, you really kind of zigzagged around.
But I'll tell you, though, it all connects. It all does. It's magic. I didn't expect that. But so I was a college professor in wellness, and I taught stress management as one of the classes. And I drank the Kool-Aid, and I thought that you should become a college administrator. And so when I moved to Arizona, I became a college administrator. And I learned a lot of things about myself, and one of them is that is not my passion. Everyone's angry. It's the opposite of wellness. Students are angry at faculty. Faculty are angry at administrators, and administrators are angry. Okay. So they wouldn't let me teach very much, but I held on to the stress management class. And I say this for a very specific reason, because that's how I got into welding. Every time I would teach stress management, I would try to find something out either at the college or something in the community that would be relatable to people that can't close their eyes and breathe into a box or say Om or whatever, like some of the traditional stress management things were. So in Iowa, I did boxing, beginning, intermediate, and advanced boxing. And then in Arizona, I did blacksmithing. You take a piece of hot metal, you stick it in a forge. Everyone has hearing protection on, so you can say whatever you'd like, rasa, rasa, rah, as you're smashing metal. And then you make something beautiful. And you can give it to your mom for Mother's Day, and you can say, Mom, I made this for you. I thought about you the whole time, right? So when I was taking blacksmithing one semester, the instructor came to us and said, I'm actually leaving in a few weeks. We're moving to Colorado, and this class is going away. And I went to the head of the welding department, and I was like, look, taken this class, I think like 8 times. I don't even know how many semesters I've taken this. So I'm a novice blacksmith because I keep taking the same class over and over again. But I'm a really good teacher. So if you'd like, I could be your placeholder until you find the right person. And he said, very wisely, I'll take a chance on you, but you got to take a welding class so that the welding students don't have a vocabulary that you don't understand. So, okay. So that next semester, the only thing that was open happened to be welding sculpture. Didn't matter. It was like a survey class. It wasn't a very artsy class. It was more of a little bit, a couple weeks of this, couple weeks of this, a couple weeks of that. And I found out I was really terrible at oxy-fuel welding. And so the next semester, I took oxy-fuel welding because it's not going to win. I'm the granddaughter of a stubborn Irish woman, and oxyfuel is not going to win. At the drop ad week, I went to that same guy that gave me a chance to teach the blacksmithing class, and I said, look, it's drop ad, and I don't want to fail, so maybe I should just audit this class. And he gave me a really wise piece of advice, and I will tell students this probably every week of my life. Just when you are ready to give up, you are 1 week away from a breakthrough. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Okay. So I went to every open lab available. I practiced and practiced and practiced. We'd now passed that Sunday that was beyond the drop ad week, and I was getting nervous, but I went to all the open lab. And one night I get in there, and there's a young man who had taken some of the classes I had taught as an instructor. And he was in the welding program. And I said, Steve, what is the secret? Because I'm not getting this. You're now like the whole mentor becomes the mentee thing. I was college professor, administrator. Now I'm asking this college student for advice because I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And he said, you got to find your song. I'm like, what? This is where you're punking me, right? Remember, I still have to give you a grade this semester. And he's like, no, I'm serious. You got to slow down. You got to find a way to relax because you're going too fast. And so the next night I come in for open lab, and I hear the Carpenters playing through the lab. And I go, Steve, is that your song? He goes, you tell anyone, you die. I'm like, okay, your secret's safe with me. I'll never reveal his last name. But anyway, his point was to slow down. And when I finally just sat down and just tried to relax, I'm like, okay, just chill out. And I got it. And I was so excited. I was like a 5-year-old. I was like, oh my God, look at this. And from that moment forward, the instructor called me welder. And that's another piece.
Validation.
Yeah, because you become empowered. Now it's possible for me to do this. And so fast forward, he kept asking me if I was going to get the degree. I'm like, I don't need another degree, thanks. And SkillsUSA, competed at nationals, came back, didn't podium, but we did a very good job. And a young man who had been very sexist and obnoxious to me was struggling at a machine. And he said, hey, Shanen, can you fix this? And I listened to the noise that the machine was making, and I go, I can. So I said, I'm going to get this degree, and I said, I'm going to work for the best damn welding manufacturer in the country. And he's like, the head of the department said, okay, well, teach for me for a little bit, work part-time at a fab shop, get some experience, and then do that. And so that's how I became a trainer at Miller Electric.
Oh, okay.
And so at Miller, when I was training, and all my territory was Denver and West, Edmonton, Canada, A, and South. I was all over, traveled like a ton. It was almost 100% travel. And when I would work with predominantly men, largely the population was that were men with, like, they were in their 50s that had changed jobs. Maybe they were working for a Granger, or maybe they were working for somebody else the weeks before, or maybe even like Firestone or something. They were somehow adjacent to welding, but they weren't really welders. And then they were working for distributors. And my job was to make them look like rock stars. And I would say, it doesn't matter what color the wrapper is, the theory is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So you're going to be really good at this. Even if you can't weld really well, you're going to understand what you're doing. And honestly, if you're a salesperson, you only have to weld a short weld, because then you put the torch in their hand, and because they want to show you what they can do, right? So I did this, and here's where it all ties together. This guy looks at me and he goes, you're like a little ninja. You come in and you encourage us, and then you like sneak out of the booth. It's like, you're a wellness coach with a welding helmet.
But you have that background of being sort of a teacher.
Yep.
And it's helped you throughout your career to teach others. I could
Exactly.
tell it. I could tell.
Yeah. And I'm super passionate about it.
Yeah.
My sister knew how to write complete sentences when she got kindergarten because I'm 4 years older than her. She knew her multiplication tables in first grade because I learned them in fifth.
Interesting.
Right. Like flashcards and all that kind of stuff, because that's just always been in me. But I think the wellness piece really has helped me so much, because I can work with at-risk youth, I can work with veterans, I can work with Special Olympians, I can work with people of all different abilities and disabilities, because it's part of what you do. You kind of translate, you figure out where someone's at and figure out how to explain it to them. I grew up with a special needs aunt. She wasn't Down syndrome, but it was adjacent. It was a chromosomal issue. And I realized when I was about 11 that she was always going to be 10. And that was tough.
That's tough.
But it was also like, now we're not fighting because we used to like pinch each other as we were kids. She was just eternally 10. And then that realization made me step up. And from that moment forward, I'm like, no, I'm your protector. And when she would feel dumb or someone would say something that was confusing, my job was to translate.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that makes you
Yeah.
a better teacher. And I don't care what the topic is. I just happen to be super passionate about welding. I love welding. I love it. Like my phone, welding dogs, welding donkeys, welding running marathons, welding. Like it's just everything. I love it. I'm so passionate about it. But I love to ignite that spark in someone else. I love to see the light bulb go on over their head and they feel super empowered. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you have that natural ability, and thanks for sharing about that story about her. But you found your passion, and you found what you love to do. Not many people get to do that, and it's interesting how your path. You didn't come from a blue collar background. It just worked out that way. But you're doing amazing stuff. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd want to share? Just anything about your program or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Weld Like a Girl, but we are co-ed. I want to make sure that I'm clear because a lot of times guys will be like, but I want to learn. I'm like, great. But it's Weld Like a Girl. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a girl. And honestly, the name is because when you say you run like a girl or you fight like a girl, it's usually an insult. And you will get high school and college professors across this country that tell you that girls can make better welders. Now, I'm not going to say that girls are better at welding. I'm going to say girls are easier to teach at younger ages. If I have a high school girl and a high school boy, same age, 17-ish, somewhere 16-ish, he's going to hip check me, shove past me, get in the booth, and burn the crap out of everything because he already knows what he's doing. Now, I'm making a gross generalization, but this has happened several times, more than several times.
You have experience with that.
Yes. The high school girl will say, okay, so when I do this, this happens. And we go through the motions. And when I do this, this happens. And she'll ask 20 questions. By the time she actually pulls the trigger or strikes the arc, she's about halfway there. I have to go back in the booth with the boy and say, okay, you done burning my stuff up now? Because this is what we really want to do. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think, that balances out after obviously a certain age. But initially it's easier to teach girls. And I think it's because they're partly afraid. They don't want to get hurt. They don't know anything about it. And so they're like, I just want to make sure that I'm doing this right. So the name Weld Like a Girl is to say, yeah, I weld like a girl. Try to keep up. Actually, I don't do that, but some of my interns have said that. But yeah, so we're a working fab shop, and we have classes for the private sector. If you and your kids are happening to come through Yuma, Arizona, you can be like, okay, I'll look at the website or I'll give her a call and see what's going on. You could take a class that would be like a 3-hour class. It's all project based. And so you guys would take home the thing that you're supposed to make that day. Then I also work in the mornings, as I mentioned, with a charter high school. And then I work with other charter high schools, and I work with juvenile courts sometimes. A couple times a year, I get to work with Special Olympians, do some things with veterans. Want to do more with that. There are some resources that I'm exploring, but I also have the only power hammer in our town.
Okay.
So, because the blacksmithing, right? That was where I started with welding. And so when my sister decided to move to Portugal, I was kind of a little mad at her for leaving because, Portugal's not a quick trip from Arizona. So I think she tried to bribe me by giving me a power hammer. So, so we have a power hammer that's named after her. It's the Allisinosaurus.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard that before.
Yep. So it's that's our name for it. But anyway, the veterans, there's a program called Vet Art. There's some other things that we're trying to explore with veterans to really help them, take any of the stress or anxiety out and make it something productive and healing. I mean, a lot of pottery classes, a lot of blacksmithing classes that I've heard of and that I've seen that are made specifically for veterans are very therapeutic.
What is it like for you when someone makes a breakthrough through your program?
I try to keep myself together, but sometimes I'm like, I think I have something in my eye. I think that day that the high school students were teaching the second graders, that was that day my husband walked in and he looked around and he's like, whoa, I said, this is what I quit my big girl job for. This is why I don't have the benefits that I used to have. This is why I decided to break off and make my own company. And yeah, I mean, it makes it worth it. It's really hard. I mean, having your own business, especially if you're not manufacturing something, I'm primarily a school, but because I'm a fab shop, but I'm a school. And so you have to give opportunities to students, and that's the main thing. And so you're not going to do anything quick. So if someone asks you to make something, my first question is, what's your timeline? Because if you need it now, I'm a CWI. I qualify welders all the time. I can give you people that can get this done faster than we can. But I'm not going to probably do it myself. I'm going to have other people help me because that's the only way they're going to learn. And maybe if it's really important, I'll do most of it, but still I'm not going to have you just hand me the wrench. Like I don't want that kind of relationship where, dad has you hold the flashlight or something. That's not how we do it. You're going to be in there. So I think that's part of it is, that because we're not a manufacturing facility, we're not a high volume fab shop, that does kind of hold us back a little bit. But I have 2 students who have gone on to get full ride scholarships to pipe welding schools.
Super cool.
One of them, both of them are employed. One of them, one of them is employed full time, and the other one has to wait till he's 21. He has a CDL, but he wants to work on the pipeline, but he has to be 21 in order to operate with a CDL. But I've had several other students that were the first people in their families to get a full-time job.
I love that. That's got to be so fulfilling to
Amazing.
you.
Amazing.
I just, when people find their own passion and what they're supposed to be doing, and it sounds like it just, you're happy. No Sunday night blues for you.
No.
I mean, it's just...
no, you work a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not a lot of days off.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to the welding summit, I'm like, God, I'm sitting so much. I'm so uncomfortable. My hip flexors are tight. Like I only sit when I'm eating lunch, but I love it. And I love the fact that as a part of running my own business, I can explore things that I can teach my interns and my students. Workshops for Warriors is here. Lyle Palm is here from Workshops for Warriors. They're out in San Diego. They're a fantastic facility. They offer machining and welding for veterans and people transitioning out of the military. Well, I've done workshops with them trying to recruit women, trying to help them get more female veterans into their program. But this past year, they asked me to join them at their gala, which is on the USS Midway.
Ooh.
Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's an expensive, fancy dress-up dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And when they asked me to do that, I said, well, could I donate something because you're comping my tickets? And my husband and I would love to join you. And I'm thinking, like, I'll just make something. And then a couple weeks go by, and they're like, oh, you're going to be our featured artist. I'm like, you guys, I'm a welding fabricator. I'm not really an artist. But apparently I can't get out of that. So now it's just, I'm going to have to own it. But
Game on.
So I made something that I didn't have a lot of time to do, but I put my heart and soul into it. And so I didn't have the students weld a ton of it just because I'm like, this has to be a piece that someone's going to spend $8,000 on to donate to Workshops for Warriors or, somewhere about there. But that is the kind of thing that I try to teach the students too. We're going to make donations. Some of the things that you do are going to go to whatever this national foundation is going to be. And it's going to be a local chapter most of the time, just because I want to keep the money locally to help our community. But I want them to be a part of it. So you're going to build something that is going to help benefit other kids. But most of the structures that we build are permanent installations. They're like welcome signs or things that are very big. So as you drive by, you're like, I was inside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting way to do things, but I want them to be as involved as possible. But like this flag that I did for Workshops for Warriors, I already knew how to braze, but we were brainstorming, interns and I, and so I was like, what if we took shotgun? Actually, my intern Grayson thought of the shotgun shells as the stars of the flag. And so I experimented, taught them. We brazed everything from the back to kind of hide it, but the heat input blued the metal. So the blue background of the canton of the American flag.
Oh.
Right. So like I get to experiment as the business owner, I get to experiment, I get to learn things, I get to make mistakes. And that way, when I go back to the students, I'm like, I already made this one, so this one's not yours. You have to make your own mistakes, but I already learned this one for you. But everything I do, either as a fabricator or as an artist, I can help them. I can translate that to them and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what if have you ever taken stainless steel stick electrode on steel? Rusted the steel. Stainless isn't going to rust. They're like, oh, like the things that I get to screw up as a person who owns this business. Nothing is ever wasted. That's the thing. Mistakes are your best teacher. No experience is ever wasted.
Yeah, that's a great. If you could share those, if you can share those pictures, I would
Sure.
like to share it along with this when this episode airs.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well. So we could definitely. I'd like to take a look at that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was
That's an
pretty
honor.
pleased.
Yeah, that's an honor.
It was. Well, and, I mean, no pressure. Like, it's only workshops for warriors, and it's only on the USS Midway. And I'm like, all I could think of is, please, someone at least buy it for like at least $1,000. Like, I put a lot of time, as much as I could, but I didn't have a lot of time. But I'm already working. I already have ideas for next year's project, and so I'll start it significantly earlier.
Yeah, you have more time.
Yes.
I'm sure it came out, and
it was
came
cool.
out, yeah,
It was interesting. I mean, there's
learning
always things that
experience.
you look at. If you're a fabricator or an artist, there's always things that you're like, oh, I wish I would do this differently. But I'm like, I just had to let that go. That's the wellness piece too. I have to practice that. I'm like, take a deep breath in, let it go. This is what came out.
Right.
This is what we have.
So much you can control.
Right.
at
And
the end of the
also,
day.
I think too, if your intentions are good, I really do. A lot of times when you build something, it may not be perfect, but if you are putting your heart and soul into it, it's the right thing.
I 100% agree with that.
And you'll get better every time you do stuff.
Right. It's just reps, practice.
Exactly.
If people want to find out more about you on social media or your website, where do they go?
So Instagram is Weld Like a Girl, with underscores in between, Weld Like a Girl. And then our website is weldlikeagirl.us. I'm also on LinkedIn, Weld Like a Girl, and then also Shanen Aranmor. And Facebook is Weld Like a Girl. I think it's just US afterwards. I don't think it's a dot in there. So I used to do Twitter, but it was super time consuming. I do TikTok, kind of just getting into that just because of all of the security issues that were questionable for a while for TikTok. So I'm kind of a newbie. I think I've probably posted maybe 100 things to TikTok, but I'm working on it. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I will learn.
Yeah, that's great. I will post that all in the show notes
Perfect,
for
thank
everybody
you.
to see. Amazing story. I'm glad that we connected here at the summit. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm grateful that I get to be the person to introduce you tomorrow at your speech at the Welding Summit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.